Let's talk about Tamons' B-side and the parasocial relationships and love in anime. Hi, my name is Lo. I'm a writer, screenwriter, and I'm going to talk about 101 essays on love in anime. So stay around if this is not your anime, but other videos that you enjoy about psychology and anime. We're going to dive into Tamons' B-side. Spoilers ahead, I'm going to talk about episode one by one, talking about all of those 12 episodes, diving into the psychology and foundation of these characters, and my social commentary about parasocial relationships. So I'm going to explain my points, my views, and so much stuff that I've seen in this anime. I have to give you a heads up. I don't normally watch romance anime or rom-com, but this has been a recommendation by one of my best friends, and I do take these serious. And I did enjoy the anime in parts and think it's a great way to reflect on parasocial relationships. Of course, you can also just be a watcher that enjoys a good rom-com anime, but likewise, I dare you to look a little bit deeper and reflect to your own life. I don't like any of the characters at all. I have zero attachment, and I have to say, it is something that I haven't experienced for a while. But I do like the characters from a writing perspective and how the anime evolves when it comes to showcasing different layers of the characters. Sorry to disappoint you, thought that I'm gonna fall head over heels for Tamon-kun. That is just not the case, and maybe my teenage old self would have done that, but no, we have grown. What a great joy that is. For those of you who don't want to get spoiled too much but get an idea what the anime is about, Taman's B-side is going to explore a journey of a female main character that is the housekeeper of Tamon, who is part of an idol group called Face. She basically starts working for him and then realizes, oh wait, there is my idol, but this is how he is actually in real life. It starts with the story of her having to navigate the boundaries between I'm a fan, but I'm also his housekeeper, and I'm navigating the stardom around him. She is still a fan. We still get to see a lot of fandom culture and the social commentary around that. And it is all done under a tone that I specifically think is the joy of this anime and how to watch it, because it is so over the top in so many episodes. Specifically in screenwriting, we differentiate between atmosphere, tone, and story. The story is, as I just explored, the tone is the way certain scenes are portrayed and give you a feeling of. The atmosphere is the landscape often or around the cinematography. For example, in horror, that would be that eerie feeling that you get when you are in a darker scene. The ambience is more silent, and all of a sudden the voice drops. Now, with this anime, we have a very over the top tone, and this is quite, I'd say, stereo standard for romance, rom-com, animes, and anime in general that can be quite over the top. Some jokes, some things that you just wouldn't see in Western media. Seeing it from that perspective, I think is important because at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be that serious. It doesn't have to be that deep. But I do love exploring characters psychologically and diving a bit deeper into the tone and writing of certain characters and certain people. And that is something that I'm going to point out when it comes to the episodes and the characters. Now is the time where we're going to dive into the episodes. So if you haven't seen it yet and you don't want to be spoiled, just skip that part and go towards the end where I'm going to talk as an overall overview and why I think it's important to pay attention to certain themes. One of my favorite episodes is the pilot. It's just a very straightforward, over the top tone and how it introduces the characters. We get to meet the female main character. She's 17 and Tamon is 18. I had to look this up because I was like, what am I going to engage with? And what is the view that I need to keep in mind when I think about and analyze these characters? We meet the fangirls, we meet the rock star stardom, and we are very soon introduced with the second side, and this is kind of the theme for all of the main characters from the idol group phase, the B-sides, how they are outside of their idoldom. What I love about the tone and the pacing here is that it just doesn't beat around the bush, and it kind of like goes straight to the core of what we're going to deal with in the next couple of episodes. Season 1 and 2 introduce us to the idol world, and honestly, as someone who's been working in the music industry for a couple of years and having been part of the Korean music industry for over 10 years, I just saw that and I was like, this is all too familiar. Actually taking note in episode 2 when the fangirls are having a fight over what they idol would like or not like is so real and rooted in patriarchy of how fandom culture is treated and seen around the world, especially also in Korea and Japan. I mean, fandoms and fandom culture is a big thing worldwide, regardless of which person you follow around or not. But there are differences when it comes to Korean idol groups or Japanese idol groups. The way fandom is over there or treated within those industries is a whole nother level. As someone who has been falling in love with K-pop since I was just a teenager, I know exactly what that's like. I know exactly the toxicity, the competition that is kind of like projected from the society and the industry onto young girls fighting and needing to be so addicted to their idol that they literally would worship their ground. K-pop Demon Hunters has recently done an excellent job of showcasing that to a level where it's so touching, realistic, and at the same time spot on. But what I do love about the introduction of Tamon when he shows up the first time is just that his B-side feels the most realistic in the sense that he is having the heaviest mood swings and self-doubts slash imposter when it comes to being who he actually is outside of his idol image and his idol group. I love that he is a character that isn't just bland in the sense that, oh, he's always so sexy and then he's just moody. No, these are actually realistic layers of a teenage boy that doesn't know who he is because he's become an idol at such a young age. And that is such realism when you actually look at some of the K-pop groups and the J-pop groups that are out there and still trained that way from a very young age to become part of an idol group. You are literally trained to be someone else. And that is what I can appreciate and love about this anime. It doesn't sugarcoat that. It never hides the reality that is very much happening in the real world. Entering episode 3, our Nepo baby. Of course there had to be a Nepo kid in there. And once again, that is so realistic. And at the same time, I'm just, oh my God. Please sit down and think for yourself for once and just, yeah, likewise, what a privileged, person. It is a classic introducing the antagonist in comparison to Tamon that we meet in the first couple of episodes. Urikun shows up and obviously similar to Tamon in his idol phase or his idol group, there are layers, and Urikun is just the type of character that grew up with rich parents and is the kid that definitely was never told no. I don't like people like that in real life, ever. Like, ever. If you don't have an ounce of self-reflection and empathy, I have no empathy for you. And in my reality, I do avoid those type of characters. However, throughout the anime, this has actually become the most best written layered character, in my opinion. And once again, it goes back to he's just a very young kid that needs to figure out his emotions and definitely go to therapy. Up until this point, I had no opinion on the female main character pretty much because she just struck me as the good girl character, and I will come back to this in the later episodes because the one point that I'm still missing and still not seeing is that I just for once want to see her make a choice that feels truly just a choice on her own and isn't written under a patriarchal gaze. I understand that this is kind of a fever dream anime that is giving this is you and your fictional dream of being close to your idol, and the watcher is most likely having to relate to being in that position. But honestly, apart from this being they are teenagers, there's a lot of moments where I look at and I'm just not buying them, and I'm just not into that anymore because there's a lot of non-consent that happens in this anime that is kind of overlooked and sugar-coated, and I'm gonna call that out in a moment for the later episode. That said, she's a very relatable character to any teenage girl that has been in a confusing position. And I think this is still not just a teenage girl coded situation, but a lot of female presenting people slash women are in those situations to realize, wait, actually, where am I signing up for the patriarchy and something that is so systematic about supporting an idol that I might not even know in real life and behind the scenes, and likewise just enjoying myself. I think we should never shame women slash female presenting people, any type of person of gender, for being a fan. I've been part of the music industry in multiple ways, directions, whether that's the Korean music industry or with indie bands, and the amount of patriarchy that sits in the system from managements and from people behind the stage is insane. I feel so sorry for a lot of girls not having that self-reflection and worth and understanding that they are allowed to speak up. You know, I've always been the type of person that spoke up. I've never felt like I have to validate my position in front of the stage. The fact is that most bands wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the female fanon that supports it. And there's truth and support in that. And there's likewise, obviously, patriarchy and a system coded that runs deeper than just the casual fangirling. So we definitely should question it. And we definitely should think about it in a way that we understand what we are reflecting back to younger generation of girls and just the teenage feeling. And likewise, I do think it's important to say it's okay to be a fan as long as you're aware, as long as you understand that this is not a one-way road, and you should never just become someone's idle defense lawyer in that sense. One of my other favorite episodes was episode 5 when it comes to the competition bias. Oh my god, the Korean music industry is plastered with competition, and it has changed a lot in the last years, and likewise it is so competitive still. I've seen this in the dance industry, I've seen this in the music industry, and I still see this in other industries as well, where competition is just something that is so systematically rooted, especially by management and people behind the scenes. It's insane. And likewise, I've never subscribed to it. I was like, listen, I don't want to be that person that gets compared in whatever sense. So you do your thing, and likewise, I will do my thing. Because it's stupid. We are also freakishly unique, you know? And no one should ever feel like they have to compare themselves. But when it comes to idols and how they are performing with the numbers and the pressure that stands behind them, that hits so real. Episode 5 captures that in such a brilliant way, especially when it comes to the relationship between Orikun and then Tamon-kun. Now, episode 6 had me in a chokehold, but not for the reasons that you might think. I know a lot of people will have watched episode 6 and thought, that's so hot. That's amazingly hot. And it just made me uncomfortable. I'm talking about the cake incident, and you guys will know when you've watched the anime. The cake incident is a full-on non-consensual scene, and the social commentary that's missing in that moment is so important. It happens later in episode 9, but for me, that's way too late. Yes, it's cool that Tamon eventually reflects on it, but likewise, it should have happened in the very moment. This whole idea that just because you find someone hot, it's okay to lick someone's face or just be close to them is not okay. I'm glad that Tamon eventually gets the chance to reflect on that and later onward steps up when Orikun tries something similar. But likewise, this is so important to social comment on it from her side. And we didn't really get that. We didn't really get a stand-up where she understood, like, we got a fangirling moment of like, oh my god, this is so, I'm so out of it again. And this is the tone, as I said, that has been chosen for this anime and the way it's bringing and delivering certain scenes. And when it comes to non-consent, you can still have a social commentary in this anime, in this moment, in any story. And I think it's so important because this is something that I keep seeing how normalized it is in romance anime for characters to be so touchy-feely and use close proximity for the wrong reason. Now I give Tamon the grace of I'm a teenage boy and I don't know what I'm doing. But I'm going to take this to a feminist level of, okay, cool. This is exactly the boys will be boys conversation if we don't keep having social commentary around this. And yes, it's a rom-com anime and it can be funny and it can be fluffy and nothing always has to be that serious. But when it comes to non-consent, we just have normalized how normal it is in certain media for this to happen. And I do think it's important because those type of animes are also watched by a lot of younger people, and we shouldn't normalize something like this as this is actually quite hot. Tamon made it a clear mistake. He had no consent to lick off a piece of cake of the main character's cheek. It is not okay. Even him apologizing for that still doesn't make it okay. It was never okay to begin with. Okay, let's talk about episode 7 and the leader of the group. Honestly, the amount of times I have met guys like this are more than 2 hands. So I'm going to be very transparent here. This is a great written character because he's very real. There are plenty of people like that in the industry who will talk patriarchal about women and just see the money. And the way the leader has been written about, oh, he just wanted to see his family smile because that's what Tamon later on says in the anime. He just wants to see his family happy, is not an excuse to talk down on women and is not an excuse to be so controlling and disgusting. I will stand behind that. And once again, this is a conversation where I think we have to speak up about this more because even or especially in a rom-com situation, we shouldn't normalize that this is just, that's just how he is because, he's doing it for our family. Yeah, you can still be a considerate, reflected person, especially as the leader, especially as the adult in the group. I think he's just the most terrible of all of them. The whole commentary around the crazy fans, so deeply rooted in patriarchy. I repeat this once again. Most bands wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the female presenting fandom. You're lucky that we're there in front of the stage supporting you, and you better treat and respect women, period. What I did love in episode 7 is just the conflict that we see with the main character because she's so driven between the lines of how am I a fan, who am I as a fan, and who I am as this housekeeper. I think that's a very real thing to ask. You don't have to be a housekeeper close to your idol, but where am I a fan and where am I subscribing to patriarchal patterns and was just being myself and enjoying myself. Episode 8, I believe, is the episode where I think I said episode 9 before, but it's episode 8. I looked at my notes. Where Tamon actually speaks up about Orikun grabbing her wrist, and he sees that, interacts with that, and says, that's not okay, I've messed up before. And that is great. And I love that. I just wish there would have been a scene where right after this cake incident happened, there would have been a lot more social commentary from her side likewise. And this is something that I criticize about the female main character is she's just giving good girl all the time. I just wanted so far for her just once losing it in the sense of the disrespect she constantly gets from the leader, the disrespect Oricon has delivered to her, and even the crossing over consent lines between Tamon and her. I'm just like, girl, just speak up for yourself. But it always leads back to, oh, I'm so understanding. And this is just people pleasing over and over again. And I do think there's a social commentary that needs to be added here that, it's about anger too. She should be angry in certain situations. She shouldn't constantly think about what's the right thing to do as a housekeeper. She's a teenager. She will mess things up as well. But it always comes back to, oh, it was my fault. I'm so sorry. Oh, I'll do better again for them, for Tamon Kun. And I think that in itself is patriarchal. I don't think that's empowering. I don't think that's a good way for a female main character to be seen in that position. I understand that once again, she's very young. She's still learning who she wants to be. But I do think there could have been moments where she truly speaks up because whenever she speaks up, it's about Tamon. It's never about, I think I deserve better. I think this shouldn't be that way. It's always with one of the boys that she cares so deeply for. And I think that needs therapy. Now we're going to come to episode 9. Your face can't be damaged because it is one of the most important products to produce money, is one of the lines that falls in episode 9 when Tamon forgets to put on sunscreen and the leader has a moment. He's just so disgusting. Another line that I wrote down that is really important is a normal chick would have melted by now. And this comes from Urikun in regards to getting the attention from our beloved main character again. Seriously, what more is there to say other than yikes? Honestly, I think a past version of me would have thought, that's so hot, that's so attractive. But the more I see the social commentary around these boys, apart from Tamon-kun, who actually has a reflective moment, and maybe my bestie Blondie, who is so relatable in ways, I'm gonna come to that in a second, I'm just like, I'm not standing for that. And then we come to episode 10, and once again, there was a close proximity theme situation where a lot of people possibly thought, that is really extremely hot. It's the shower scene, as I call it, where Tamon approaches our beloved main character and then leans in when she is embarrassed. And the reason why I call, maybe I need to get a buzzer at some point where I'm just about these moments, because even though this is a soft scene, even though this is about emotional feelings, the fact that he closes her in a very intimate space without really asking her is crossing the line of consent. They have, apart from being a housekeeper and idol, not have yet an established relationship about who they are other than friends helping each other out. Even with friends, like she is clearly in a situation, this is where I'm calling BS. She's in a situation where she's embarrassed, where she's flustered, where she's trying to run away from the situation, and he creeps up and leans in. That is not cool. That is not hot. That is not okay. We are wrapping this up, leading into the direction of, I call them Blondie. Like for some characters, I have not noted down their names. I have not taken the time, because to me, it's more like a character construct, especially with our beloved female main character, who just deserves better, in my opinion. Our Blondie is so relatable with his addiction to alcohol and smoking. The amount of times that idols pretend to be good or pretend to be a certain thing and then they are another behind the scenes happens more often than you might think. I think what's really relatable here is, despite not me saying, oh yeah, just grab a bottle, just smoke a thing, I don't smoke anymore, I don't drink anymore, I've let that go a long, long time. It's just so normalized in the music industry. Once again, it's not for me anymore. I think it's so important to look at this and understand that this is just most often the natural side effect for people who are under an enormous pressure and stress. Blondie is one of my favorite characters, therefore. Like, once again, I say I have no attachment in the sense, and I don't necessarily like them either, because it's just, ugh. But when it comes to writing, I think he's one of the best from Faces Group. I still think the leader is very accurate. I think he's disgusting. I think Orikun needs to have therapy and sit with his nepotism. I think Tamankun means well, but likewise needs to sit with his mood swings. I don't have anything other to say about number 5. I've watched 12 episodes. I think there's a lot of good stuff and funny stuff. Like, a lot of the things that I did enjoy was the social commentary in terms of the over the topness, the fangirling, the oh my god, oh my god moments. These are relatable. This is what it's like to be a teenager, being confused about what it's like to fall for an idol. We all have artists that we look up to, that we would faint for, that we have certain emotions for, that feel confusing and complex. And likewise, at the same time, I'm just like, there's a lot of stuff that I just had to make my commentary on. Why I still think it is so important, and this is still a very good written anime, is the layers and the complexity. The tone that was chosen in a rom-com setting is very over the top, and I do miss a lot more social commentary. However, this is an anime written, it is an anime based on a female mangaka, and I do think there's a lot more female gaze in there, despite obviously the natural patriarchy that is written into characters like the leader and Orikun. It is just fascinating and likewise very realistic and terrifying how easy it is for some people to not see that truth, that, there's always multiple sides to the artist that we admire, and we should be aware of that, and we should understand and reflect on that. And likewise, if you just enjoyed the anime, that is just okay and fine. I would love to hear your opinions, your thoughts on the characters. As I said, I don't have any emotional attachment to any of them. You've heard my social commentary, you've heard my opinions, but I'd love to hear if there's sides of the characters that you feel relatable to, that you feel like, oh, I know exactly what that is like, I know exactly what that feels like. Because that is the beauty of anime, and the love and the layers around the anime and the media we consume. Stay around for more anime essays. This was my parasocial relationship love take for my 101 anime essays on love.